All right, now that we've told you that radio works, let's start our show. It's WKRK Radio in Murphy, 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide we're at country.am. And we want to, before we get to the show, we want to remind you that tonight is the first regular season game for high school football that's coming up. We're going to be broadcasting live. Murphy is traveling to Pisgah. We will be there live on all of our broadcast channels. And Towns County will be playing at Hayesville, Andrews at Smoky Mountain, Fannin County at Gilmer County, Copper Basin at Polk County. Game time is 7:30. Our pregame show will start at 7 o'clock tonight right here on WKRK. And to view the schedules or any of the score updates during the game, you can just go to our website at country.am and just scroll to the bottom of the page, and all that will be updated for you there. All right, it is a Friday, the 17th day of August 2018, and we're back with Sheriff Derek Palmer, who's seen way too much activity this week, and we'll be talking about that in just a minute. Good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing fine. Hope you're having a good day today and that you've gotten a little sleep since Monday night.
I've gotten a little bit of sleep, but I've noticed the older I get, the more it takes to recover.
I can understand that.
Yeah, so those all-nighters kind of wear on me anymore, but yeah, it was interesting Monday night.
All right, well, let's just go ahead and jump into that. Most of the people already have either heard the press release here on WKRK or read it on our website or Facebook page. But Monday night there was a murder-suicide, and that you guys are still investigating that, or is the investigation complete?
No, it's still been under investigation. The State Bureau of Investigations has helped us with the crime scene and working that investigation, trying to determine exactly what happened and the motives and all those type of things that's involved with that. So by the conclusion of the investigation, even though we know there's obviously no charges to be filed, we still want to have the information there that you can provide to the families that are asking questions about what happened, that you don't just shut your doors and just go home after an incident like that, but you try to gather as much information as you can to answer whatever questions the families may have.
All right, so let's kind of, for our listeners and viewers who may not have seen that press release, let's kind of go over what was happening. I know I was telling you before we went on the air that I was leaving town. We had a meeting for the, we just had a drug prevention meeting to help our citizens, and I was driving on the 4-lane, and all of a sudden I see Derek behind me with his blue lights on, and I'm thinking, uh-oh, what have I done now? So I kind of slow down in the right lane, and then you go
Well, slowing
flying.
down and moving over is the correct step to do. So
Very good.
Speeding up and trying to go faster is not correct.
I was trying to remember, now do I pull off the side of the road and stop, or just pull over and slow down in the right lane?
Right.
So I think that's what I did. Did I do right or wrong?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I thought I'll just give Derek plenty of room to get past me. Thankfully, he's not right behind me. So,
well, let's speak to that for just a moment, because one of the things about driving emergency traffic, whether it's law enforcement, EMS, fire, whatever that may be, it's important to understand that we cannot demand the right-of-way. Right. What we're doing is we're requesting the right-of-way.
Okay.
And so when you come up to intersections and things of that nature, you're requesting for all the cars to stop. You're requesting, to have a clear path to travel through that. A lot of people get confused about that, and even law enforcement gets confused a lot of times, because you'll see people blasting through intersections 100 miles an hour. And really, law enforcement or fire EMS does not have that right to do that. Mm-hmm. Even though you may have emergency equipment on, if you were to hit someone coming through an intersection, you could still be liable for that. So hopefully, if you observed my driving, hopefully you saw that I slowed down going through the intersections.
You were very respectful, yes.
and those type of things.
I noticed you looking both ways at the McDonald's intersection,
right,
just to make sure that the safety part was there.
Right, and that's the most important thing, because one of the things they train you in emergency driving is you can't help anybody if you don't get there yourself. So you have to make sure you arrive safely. And so I just want to throw that in there, a little icing on what we're talking about there for a minute.
Mm. So that night, when you went by me, you were actually heading to that scene. So I'm guessing that's about the same time the 911 calls came in from the neighbor. about a shooting down, and that was on was it Twin Pond Road?
Twin Pond,
Off
yes.
of Sandy Gap Road.
Yes, it was. And like I say, there's going to be some details, and people will have some questions that we just can't talk about right now at this moment because it's still technically an ongoing investigation. But generally speaking, what had happened was we had received a report from some neighbors down there in that area that they had discovered a female laying in the driveway bleeding. And they went to check on her to see if she was alive or if she was okay. And a male who they knew and identified was firing weapons at them while they were in the driveway, actively still trying to shoot them and to shoot the lady in the driveway and several other people. So we had an active shooter situation going on. And so anytime you have an active shooter situation going on, you have a large response coming to that. And so, luckily this is one of those things that was contained into a home, into an area. Even though it was a development and a residential area, it was contained. It wasn't a situation where you'd have such as a movie theater or a hotel or somewhere where you have a large evacuation scale you have to do.
Right.
So that if there is a ray of sunshine in this, that is one of the good things that happened, that it was contained to a certain area that we'd have to worry about mass evacuations.
All right. So one of the things, both of the people there, the person that was shot was a Blairsville resident, and the shooter was from Blue Ridge.
That's correct.
Were they staying at that house? People wondering why out of town people were there in Murphy.
They were staying up here. They had stayed at that house at least for a short period of time. Mm-hmm. They had friends up here, people they were visiting, that type of thing, and so they were here in the area for that reason. There was, like I say, a lot of this story will come out later, and we'll talk about it later. But in respect to the family, in respect to some things that happened, there's some personal issues there that we don't want to necessarily talk about on the air and discuss. But basically, what had happened was once this started, and once this kind of we arrived on scene up there, we spent a span of several hours of evaluating the situation. The woman was checked on by deputies and found to be deceased at that point. We really was not for sure at that moment whether he was still in the house or whether he had fled in a vehicle or in the woods or whatever, but we assumed he was still in the house and went ahead and contained the house and set up a perimeter around it just to be sure. A span of several hours passed with trying to negotiate and trying to get him to respond. With no response, he did not respond at all for several hours. Long in the night, once we got a search warrant to go into the house, and we had SWAT teams on scene to go in to the house. Once we moved into close proximity with the Bearcats and with people around the house, he began at that point to begin opening fire on officers at that point.
So even though there is an active shooter, you still have to obtain a search warrant?
We probably did not have to obtain a search warrant at that point. There was exigent circumstances that we could have entered the home. But anytime you have time and it's not an emergency that you have to go in right this moment, it's always better to obtain a search warrant. It's always better to do that. And so if you've got time to obtain one, we try to go ahead and obtain that search warrant.
Is that just to make sure that if there's a court case later that you
Right.
have that paperwork in place?
Right, that is. And so, we have to make sure that if for example, if he was to given up and we had to go into the house and he gave up and we went in the house, those type of things, we have our bases covered for criminal prosecution at the end of that. Now again, if it was one of those situations where we were both there and he was actively shooting, we had to make entry in the house, of course you could do that without a search warrant. You wouldn't have to do that. And technically, even through the circumstances that happened, we probably didn't have to have a search warrant to do that. But like I say, we always want to err on the side of caution. If we're going to make a mistake, we want to make a mistake that will err on the side of caution to cover us later. So anytime we have those situations, and Darrell Brown, our county attorney, he always makes the statement when we inquire about whether we need search warrants or need, certain arrest warrants or things that we may need. He always says, well, you probably don't need it, but go ahead and do it and take the argument away from the defense.
Right.
So if you go ahead and do it, you take that argument away. So That's kind of the way we operate.
That makes
and
sense.
work on that. You know.
So, how long was this standoff once you responded? And
It started about, if I recall correctly, about 8:30, somewhere along in there at night, and it resolved probably close to 4:30 the next morning, 5 o'clock, somewhere along in there. So 8-9 hours, somewhere along in there.
so, I just want to say we appreciate the law enforcement for responding and the time, because, you know, Monday you probably had a long day at the office all day long, and then at 8:30 at nighttime you start all over again with this new situation that lasts until 4 in the morning. So
Right.
you have to be worn out at that time. I know the adrenaline's flowing, and you have to do whatever you have to do to take care of the community and
Right.
make sure that the situation gets contained. So what was the feeling there that night among you and all the law enforcement?
Well, one thing I do want to mention too, as we're talking about this, is we have several people at the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office that is SWAT trained, that has SWAT certifications. We have several people that have negotiation certifications and certified negotiators and skills for that. One thing that I was very proud of with our deputies also is that we have several deputies that we have hired that has military combat experience.
Right.
And one thing I was very impressed with, and we had talked about this amongst ourselves as of an after action report, is the fact of that we didn't have anybody that got rattled. Typically when you have things like that happen and you get in car chases, you get shot at, you know, it'll rattle you. It'll shake you up a little bit. But what we found there that night is we found some very qualified, very professional people that did not get rattled, that did not get bent out of shape in any way, held their perimeters, did the things they needed to do. And so I was very proud of that. I was very proud of our office for that situation.
How many people got shot at that night? Can we tell?
At the time that shots was being fired, I think we had somewhere along the area of 10 to 15 deputies on scene. We had a Cherokee SWAT was there at that time. And so we had all kind of people there on scene. That was, and one of the issues was up to that point, we didn't know whether he was even in the house or not.
Right.
And so that when bullets started flying, there was, for just a minute, there was a question of whether it's coming from the house or from the woods. And so it took just a second to figure out where they were coming from. And so we had to evaluate all that also.
And I know the Bearcat vehicle, you said in the press release that was shot at as well.
Right, it was. It was. We had officers come as far away as Asheville coming out. We had the SBI respond. We had both Cherokee and Jackson County SWAT respond to that. And one things that we want to try to mention is on this too, and I don't know who these people are, what they're texting on there, but no one's deleting comments.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're talking about here.
Yeah, we're just talking about, see, someone named
Yeah.
John Ray is saying that we're deleting comments, but
Yeah.
we're watching those come in, but we're just talking here.
I mean, I don't know what they're talking about here. But the fact of the matter is that as we were dealing with this and as we were having the house surrounded, we don't want to cause more problems that are already there. So you don't want to rush into a scene too quickly. You don't want to go in and send officers in to get shot themselves. You know, so we have to, once the perimeter is contained, we have to address that professionally, and we have to deal with that as
Right.
it comes up professionally on that.
All right, so it was a very tense situation, and sadly the outcome is the way it happened, and
Right.
it's a tragedy for the families, and we just want to show our respect and for both families involved and the friends.
Right.
And this can't be an easy situation. And at this time, can we discuss a motive that may have happened, or is that going to be
That's
later?
going to probably be released later at that. And like I say, we did have the State Bureau of Investigations on scene, and they did help with the crime scene and that kind of stuff. And so one of the things that we need to talk about also is about the Nixle call
Right.
that came out. So in Cherokee County, we have what they call Nixle. And for our call outs and to warn people about what's going on in certain areas, that is a service that you have to sign up for to
Right.
get that. The system that we have doesn't just automatically alert people. You have to sign up for this service, and this service was put out for a mile radius around the home when this happened. And so when the alert went out, people within a mile radius of the event was notified of what was going on for the people that had signed up for the Nixle.
By telephone.
By telephone.
Right. And not text
Right.
messaging.
And so some people had asked, they said, well, I was in Peachtree and I got a message, or I was in Andrews and I got a message. Some people reported I was in Clay County and got a message. And so the question was, why so far away did we get messages on that? And I talked to our emergency management director about that and get an answer for that. And what she advised was, with this Nixle system, is that if you sign up for text messages, when an alert goes out, you get them regardless of where you're at. You could, if you're signed up for the service for Cherokee County, any call that comes out in Cherokee County, you get them no matter where you're at. If you have the phone service, if you sign up for just the phone service, then if you do such as a mile radius or a 5 mile radius or whatever of an event, only those addresses that's registered within that radius gets the phone call.
And really, that's the intention of the
Right.
system too, is to target certain areas. Because honestly, if this is happening in Hiawassee Dam or Ranger, folks in Andrews don't really need to go into panic mode
Right.
at that time. You're trying to contain that situation.
That is true. And the thing about it is, like I say, if you're within that mile radius of an event and you get the phone call and you're signed up for the phone service, you might be in Atlanta, Georgia, but you will still get the phone call if your address is within that radius place. The other thing with that, as far as the text messaging, anybody that signs up for text messages will get the text message regardless of where the event occurs at.
And I think that is part of the confusion, because the text message did not specify what location this was happening at. So I did, and I knew that people were seeing, because I seen on Facebook that people had just copied and pasted that text message, and it did not give a physical location.
Right.
So people in Andrews may have thought it was happening in their community.
Right.
So I talked to Robin, and she gave me that location
Yeah.
for us to post on WKRK's
And also, I
Facebook.
want people to understand too that the sheriff's office does not put this message out. We're not the ones, or dispatch center does not put it out. We contact our emergency management services, and the call out comes from our emergency management services. So we let our emergency management services know what's going on, and once the emergency management services is the one that puts that Nixle call out. So,
And in situations like that, you're not always prepared to know how it's going to be responded in the
Right.
community. So if they thought that this is going to go within a mile radius, then that message was completely appropriate. But it got out further than the mile
Right,
radius.
it did.
So
It
that
did.
created a little confusion, and folks on social media added to that confusion with other
Right.
rumors and gossip and things that were not accurate at
That
that
is
time.
true. That is true. And the thing about it is, and I also want people of the community out here to understand, also with this, is that when you have a major event happening in the middle of being shot at, in the middle of your deputies in danger, in the middle of the public in danger, you're responding to things as they happen, right? So even though that you set up command posts and you try to get your radio communications down and all these things that are going on, there's never going to be a scene that's going to be handled 100% efficient, that everything was done 100% correctly, and that everything goes 100% correctly and everybody's satisfied at the end of it. There's always going to be complaints. There's always going to be someone that says you should have done it this way or you should have done it that way. But honestly, the officers were there trying to assess the situation to the best of their ability and handle things to the best of their ability.
You have priorities at that
Right.
when you're there on scene, and I can't imagine notifying everybody in the community of what's going on as the top priority when there's active gunfire. So
Right.
you have to do that situation and hope the other part, and just do the best you can. And for folks who want to sign up for the system, you go to Nixle, Nixle.com. I think you can text your zip code to 888777, and that will
Right.
sign you up via text. And there's also, you can go to Cherokee County government's website and sign
Right.
up that way as well. So
And the thing to also remember from a law enforcement perspective is our goals there on scene on a situation like that is, one is to make sure your active shooter is contained, to make sure that the community is physically safe from that shooter, and then information and all those things like that, we do the best we can, but will be handled at a later date. Our number one goal is to make sure that he does not escape the perimeter and endanger someone else. And
Right.
so that's kind of what our priority is at that point.
all right. At some point, you had to send a robot in, and that robot that came from the SBI, was it?
It was an SBI robot, and it's a robot they have. It's actually from their bomb unit, and their bomb unit was deployed that robot to come in and it has cameras and all those kind of things assisted to it. And so that's what we finally sent into the residents once it arrived on scene. It had to come out of Asheville, so we had to wait till they got here before we could deploy that.
Right, and Asheville's what, a 2-hour drive away, so it does take a little time to get that kind of technology, and it's incredible that we have that kind of technology at our disposal to be able to just send in a robot and that just keeps officers safe in case there was still danger present inside the home.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it is when you don't know where the suspect is, you know he's in the home somewhere, but you don't know where. One of the things is, and people say, well, go in and get him, but you don't want to send your officers into an ambush. We don't want to send them into a place where you're going to get your own people killed. And certainly you don't want to, at that point in time, once he's contained, you don't want to just go in and kill somebody. I mean, you want to try to resolve it as effectively and efficiently as you can. And SWAT units and SRT teams and all that is not a life-taking unit, but it's a life-saving unit. And so we try to go in and save that person's life if we can and take them into custody without incident if we can. And that's what our goal is.
And plus, you were not 100% certain that he was the only person in there, correct?
Right. We didn't know. We didn't know at that point if he was in there by himself or if multiple people was in there.
What kind of responses? I know you had made several attempts to contact the shooter. Did he ever respond in any way besides gunfire?
No, that's the only way he responded. He didn't respond any other way.
I couldn't imagine being in that situation. I've never been in that situation before, so I know law enforcement, they have to deal with that from time to time. So, but again, all right, so we wanted to mention what was going on with that in case our listeners have not read the press release, and just show our respects and for the families, both families involved, because sometimes things happen that they don't choose to happen, but they have to live with after that. So we just keep them in our thoughts and prayers. All right, so we've talked about that. We've talked about how to sign up for Nixle and how Nixle works. You can either get the phone calls, which are targeted by if you get the phone calls where the person speaks to you saying, hi, this is a Nixle alert or whatever, that can be targeted to just your area. But if you send your zip code to them via text message, then pretty much anybody in that 28906 zip code gets messages regardless of where you are.
Right.
So you can be on the other end of the county, and that message not really apply to you.
Yeah, that's true. And that's the thing about it, and on those, when you initially put those messages out, I think that I didn't actually see the message that came out because we get our messages, law enforcement, in a different avenue. And so I'm not sure exactly what the Nixle message did say that emergency services put out. But typically what they do is they'll give you an area that things are happening in. And so that's to let people know if you're in Andrews, this is in a different area when you get those text messages. So,
all right, so let's move on. And there's some folks going around selling books. And we wanted to kind of talk about that because that has gotten some interest and some phone calls to the sheriff's office about legitimacy.
It has. We have some people from a printer publisher place that's coming down, and they travel around the country and they sell textbooks and they sell all kind of different books. But this time of year with school starting, their primary focus is on selling textbooks. This is a legitimate group that's in the area selling textbooks. I think it's unnerved some people. When they've knocked on the door and, as salesmen do, ask if you can come in your home and sit down and talk with you about it and those kind of things. And I think some of the people that were down here doing that were a little maybe a little insensitive or maybe a little too aggressive on trying to sell their product, which made a lot of people nervous. And so they began calling and because they were selling school material and because they were selling things that pertain to the Cherokee County school system, there was some confusion as to whether they were school employees or not school employees. And when they contacted the school, the central office had told them, no, they're not employees of ours, which I think added a little bit more confusion to the people out there. But they are not school employees. The central office was 100% correct about that. They were not school employees, but they do work for publishing companies. So we've got their information, we've got who they work for and their identification and all those kind of things. At the office there, and they are legitimate salesmen that sells our products that the school system can use. So That's up to the people as to whether they want to allow them in their home or not, or whether they want to talk to them or not. But they are legitimate salesmen.
All right,
Yeah.
so they're legitimate company, legitimate salespeople, but
However-
they're not from the school system.
Right. And however, let me say this too. Also be careful though, because there could be copycats out there.
Right.
I mean, you could have criminals out there that may be copycatting what they're doing and know they're in the area and may try to do that to get into your home. So it's just a little common sense, a little caution. So it just, only allow people in your home that you're comfortable with allowing in your home.
So if they were to come to my house, what would they be trying to sell me?
They'll be trying to sell you like textbooks, school books for school, and other materials. But they also have they have like badges and identifying information that they'll present to you and show you who they work for and their names and all those kind of things. So-
Textbooks, are they relevant to what the school is teaching?
Yes. What it is, they sell textbooks all across the country. You can order whatever they have it to sell. They're a publishing company. So if whatever the school is, whether it's a chemistry class or whether it's a biology class or a math class or whatever it may be that you need a book for that class, you can order it through their company and they will sell you at discount rates, whatever those books are. So
Okay.
it's not that they're actually physically necessarily carrying books around with them. It's the fact of that they have order abilities. They can order whatever books that you need at that point.
All right. So does anyone need to, if they're going to go around selling things door to door, do they have to have any kind of permit ahead of time to be able to do that?
In Cherokee County, we do not have to have a door-to-door permit at this point. That's one thing that I think we're going to have discussions with our commission board about is whether they wanted to make ordinances as far as that need or not. We've had people selling door-to-door for years. As long as I've been in law enforcement, we've had people selling door-to-doors. We've had crews that come through. I know that we have one that sells steaks. They're out of Chattanooga. They come through and sell steaks and shrimp and those kind of things out of coolers on trucks. And we've had people come through selling all kind of different things. But we also have to be careful about that because
There's a safety concern.
there is a safety concern because you don't know who these people are a lot of times that these companies hire. And also you don't know. We had several years where we had roving gypsies come through that would do different scams of different ways, that were with the pretense of selling things that would scam to get into people's houses. We've had paving crew scams where they would come through and take money from elderly people and tell them they'd pave their driveway and they'd spray tar down on the driveway and make it look black and then leave with their money, So there's all kind of different scams associated with that door-to-door type sale. And that's why I always tell people, ask for identification, make sure you know who you're dealing with. People who are legitimate does not mind you calling their company and verifying that they work for them and things of that nature. So if they're legitimate, there will be avenues that you can make sure they're legitimate. People that don't want to give you identification, that don't want to give you their name, that don't want to give you a number to call and verify, those are the kind of people that you need to kind of be leery of and not deal with.
If anybody out there is like me, I don't want anybody coming up to my door to try to sell me anything. I don't want to even have to deal with that trust issue there. Besides not answering the door, is there any way I can post a note, no solicitation on my door?
You can.
And it be effective?
You
There's no
can.
real legal issues there, right?
Well, the other thing too is like trespassing, for example. You put up no trespassing signs or no solicitation signs in your front yard or driveway, and then that is their notification. And so if they continue to come beyond those signs or beyond that point, then technically they've committed a crime at that point. They've trespassed. So if you don't want anybody knocking on your door, anybody soliciting to you, you can put those notifications up on your property.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Well, I see our time is 11:34. Anything else you want to cover before the end of the show?
No, other than Sunday night, I'm going to be doing just a small little, it's nothing major, but doing a Facebook presentation at Valleytown Church, talking about the dangers of Facebook and kind of showing how easy it is to extrapolate information from photos, from posts, from different things that people put on Facebook. And so it's just kind of an educational thing for the church and for the people there. So anybody in the community that wants to come out and see that, but you're more than welcome to come. I'm not going to divulge any secrets to give predators the advantage, but I'm just going to show people how that is possible, that you can extrapolate information.
Tell us again, because I think the Citizens Law Enforcement Academy is going to be starting, is it next month?
I think September. I think it's the middle of September it'll start.
All right.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, how they could get applications and what to expect from that, because I'm considering signing it myself. I've filled out the application, just haven't turned it in yet.
Yeah, you can contact Roger Williams at the Sheriff's Office, and he will get you signed up for that or get you the application forms for that. There is a background check that needs to be done for anyone that applies. But upon passing a background check, and if there's no other legitimate reason why you shouldn't be taking that class, everyone's welcome to take the class. And
see, that's the area I'm concerned about, passing that background check.
Right, yeah. And so, we want to make sure, we don't allow people with criminals who are committing crimes to come in and take those classes and see how we operate and all those kind of things. But anything, that's not leery or that we feel like that person shouldn't be taking that class, you're welcome to come take it.
All right. Shannon says September 15th is when it starts. Do you know what time it begins?
Typically, he runs them of the evening, around 7 p.m. of the evening.
7 p.m.?
Yeah, that's his typical thing that he does. With that.
Okay. That would be great. All right. And, again, if anybody wants information, you can go to the Sheriff's Office and pick up the application, talk to Roger. And there's a place on the Cherokee County government page to the Sheriff's Office where there's a PDF that you can download, print, and fill out.
Right.
And then just, I think you send it back to Harold Mashburn.
Roger Williams.
Roger Williams.
Harold was the one that was doing it before, but he works for probation and parole now. So Roger Williams is the one doing it.
Mark,
they didn't change that name on the website, so we need to go back and change that.
All right. Okay. And, Shannon has sent a link there for the Sheriff's Office Citizens Academy, and so you can go there and print that out. And I think we're about done with our show because we're running late on time.
We are running late. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day. It's WKRK 105.5 FM. 1320 AM, cable TV channel 25, and worldwide at country.am. Stay tuned. We have Pastor Odd Brown coming up next right here on WKRK in Murphy, North Carolina from the Little Brasstown Baptist Church program.